Today's video is about back tumbling and connections. This video is made and brought to you by Tom Elliott 73. He said, I'm interested in more tumbling drills that complement your style and way of doing things, especially in the connections between skills such as round-offs into multiple flicks and takeoff for saltos and whips. Do arms drag down between flicks, creating a delay, or is that not a necessary thing in your opinion? I feel like it might not be needed, but was interested in what you think. Well, thanks, Tom. So if you like this video, thanks, Tom. If you don't like this video, blame Tom. That's all I have to say. Just kidding. All right, let's get into the silliness of this. Back tumbling connections. Okay, I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible because I just want to make this as a really short video. But like all things, I tend to talk too much. There's two types of connections. We got horizontal to horizontal and horizontal to vertical. You need to understand that when you're trying to work with connections, horizontal to horizontal is easier. So that's the first thing you're going to be chasing after is horizontal to horizontal connections when you're teaching progressions. And then you will transition to horizontal to vertical, back handspring to back layout, back handspring to back whip, anything that's traveling horizontally and goes a little higher. This is because when things go vertical or go away from the center of the planet of Earth, it gets more difficult. And so it's easier to go horizontal to horizontal. Thus, we can accelerate max effort through this learning curve. Then we take what we learn through horizontal connections and we transition, correlate, translate them into vertical, which they become essentially the same thing. This is how I teach rec kids all the way through team, and I tell them this as a very basic standing point. A back handspring, when taught properly, is a 3-for-1 deal. You learn 3 skills in one when you learn a back handspring taught properly. Because when a back handspring is taught properly, you can do a back handspring, a back whip, and a back layout all in the same day on a trampoline. And so if you learn a back handspring properly, you get a 3-for-1 deal. And then we accelerate the speed of learning because now we have 3 skills we can work with. Thus, we can actually do significantly more, significantly faster. Enough being said, let's dive in. This is what we do as a prerequisite for back tumbling, essentially. So if you do not have a front tuck on a tumble track and you cannot do a front layout on a tumble track, I typically do not teach any back tumbling at all. I don't really care to teach a person a back handspring who can't do this. This is just my nuance of strictness. That's not to be saying that a person cannot learn a back handspring prior to, but I think that this actually tells you if an athlete has the coordination, the power, the maturity, the effort, development needed to back tumble. And I think that front tumbling actually needs to get pushed harder and more aggressively than back tumbling does. So that's what I would do as a prerequisite to back tumbling. That's just for you people who don't, are still learning. All right, here we go. Back handspring connections. This is the first thing that I'm going to be teaching. So if I'm going to be connecting back handsprings, I'm going to be teaching the athlete to be able to see their hands and their feet when they land, when they finish. I call this kind of the down position. But what you often have is when a person is learning how to back handspring is their hands pick up and their feet are a little bit behind them and they can't see. They can see the ground, or maybe they're looking in front of them. Who knows where they're looking? But they don't see their hands and their feet. We need to be able to see our hands and our feet because that is a cue for timing and rhythm, essentially, of when you're hitting the surface and when you're supposed to throw. And so I find that athletes who are hesitant to connect, it's oftentimes because they're standing up early, they don't know what they're looking for, and they don't understand the timing and rhythm of the surface. And so I want them to be able to see their hands, feet, and the surface all at the same time when they're learning to do their back handsprings. So we would start with a single back handspring and finish in this down position of being able to see your hands and your feet. And then we would just get better at that. Once we get better at that, connecting it, easy. You just go from that position and throw it to the second one, and then you're connected. And then pretty soon the kid just goes, oh, this is easy, and there's no problems. Solved. There you go. This is the down position. The down position serves many different purposes, and it is long. I'm always thinking macro. I'm always thinking big. So I'm never doing something just for an isolated purpose. So the down position actually crosses over from the back handsprings to the cartwheels to the back handsprings on the beam. And so by learning the down position, understanding the down position, making it an anchor point psychologically to say this is what matters, you're actually developing something that's going to go and last for many, many other, skills, progressions, and years to come. So the back handspring, the down position, this orange blob circle, it kind of represents your center of mass. So the down position kind of actually lowers your center of mass, puts you on top of your center of mass, and gives you much more control. You can see that in a back handspring if I finished in the down position, in a cartwheel if I finish, and in a back handspring. The funny position you see with this back handspring is it's a balance hold down position where that back foot is kind of just touching the beam but not really weighted at all. And so you're really doing a back handspring to one foot, and then that back leg is floating. Don't get hung up on that, but that's just a position that we use for getting set up for beam back handspring connections. So this is our down position. It's very useful to understanding what needs to happen, because oftentimes the athlete is looking up, picking their head up, standing up too early, and they can't actually throw into anything, and that's where their loss of power comes from, because they lack the down position. Okay, so what exactly are we trying to do with horizontal connections? Well, one thing, you asked the question of, should I keep the arms down? Do they drag? Depends on what we're doing. So if we're doing horizontal connections and back whips a little bit less, but still there, if it's a horizontal travel, then yes, you're going to want to have the arms in the down position if we're traveling horizontally. If we're going vertical, we're going to notice that the arms will do something different. So this is kind of the correlation you want to think about, is you kind of have a 90-degree angle with your hips and a 90-degree angle with your shoulders. And as your chest rises, you kind of hold on to those 90 degrees. So it's almost as if you had this rectangle, you're holding on to with your arms and your legs. And then as you throw, it's almost as if you're throwing this rectangle beyond, past you. Still horizontally, but there's kind of this little bit of rise that goes on to you. And so this is how you're going to be connecting horizontally, whether it's from a round off, a cartwheel, or a back handspring. It doesn't matter. You're going to be following this to some level. If you start picking up your arms too early, the rectangle is going to get lost. It's going to start going up, which is not where you're going to want to go. If you start opening your hips without using your shoulders properly, like the nuances of one thing moving faster than the other does affect everything. And so you do need to have a correlation, a coordination of the hips and shoulders working together. We do want the arms to be in the down position. And then as you sit the chest up, you want a 90-degree relationship with the torso and the arms, essentially. So what I say drag, not really. They wouldn't stay on the ground. It all depends on how fast we're really moving. If we're doing very slow movements, not a lot of energy into the system, we're doing like a cartwheel back tuck, you're going to see the arms drag a lot more. They're going to stay down longer than if we're running into something. And that's just because a simple framework is, the more energy I have in the system, the less shape change I need to have. The less energy I have in a system, the more shape change I need to have, because the energy needs to come from someplace. So it's either going to come from the run or it's going to come from the shape change. If I can shape change aggressively as possible and add as much energy as possible, I can do even harder skills. So the more shape change I have and the more energy I have, then the more difficult the skill can be. But the thing that robs you is how fast you can shape change. Because if where I need to be is coming in too quickly in time and I cannot shape change fast enough, then I have to adjust to the speeds and the timing of everything. You have to be in the right position at the right time. That is the most important thing. Not so much how you get there. How you get there does matter, but you need to get there at the right time and place. So here we have that. Basically, what we're talking about here is what I call a late block. This is essentially where your center of mass is past your pivot point. So the little orange circle is moving past the point of contact, which is the feet. So that's going to create the fall. You're now falling because your feet have made contact, but your center of mass is past the point of contact. I call it late blocking. And then you're going to be shifting to get on top of your center of mass. So as your center of mass is falling, you're actually throwing into the arch position to then shift on top of your center of mass. Okay. So then we start seeing this rhythm happening where you have this rise and fall, and you'll notice that as the center of mass begins to fall, you will shift to get back on top of it so you can rise, get back on top of it. And then you go through this next position, you go past through to the hand contact, and now you start falling. You're getting below your center of mass. It's on the backside of you. If you're falling and belly's coming down, center of mass is on top of you, and you've got to shift to get back on top of it. And so always on the fall, you're trying to shift to get back on top of it so that you can actually land on your feet. If you're below your center of mass on the fall and you hit the ground, then you're going to be smushed. Bad news for you. So you're always trying to get back on top of your center of mass. Okay, so another thing about this down position, another reason why this is big picture thinking, especially for beam. If you're not teaching beam, then it's irrelevant to some regard, but it still matters. Tumble track, places this does apply. But if we just kind of get used to this habit of levering out, okay, we're going into a very big position. And then we have to get to small, from big to a small position. This is usually where the athlete starts to wobble. A lot of unstable positions basically come out of this because they're going from big to small. And the other aspect is you have the hands have to drop and the foot has to come in. So as the hands and arms are dropping, you're going from big to small, shrinking. You're actually speeding up because you're going from big to small. So you're actually speeding up. And that creates its own effects of wobbles. Additionally, this would be considered an extra arm swing. If my arms start in the up position and I bring them down, now I have to throw them. That's an arm swing, which is actually breaking the connection. And so what we'd want to do is start in the down position. We finish in the down position. So all we have to do is stand up and throw. This is the way you're going to learn to connect on beam. So oftentimes when this is not taught from a tumbling perspective, when girls go to beam and they try to connect, they get stuck. And this is the reason why back handspring becomes such a problem when it's not, because back handspring layout step out demands you actually do this. And so if you don't even have the picture inside your head of like what a layout step out requires, then you're not going to teach according to the back handsprings because you're not even thinking about the layout step out. You've got to finish in the down position to be able to throw into that layout step out when you stand up. And so that's the way you should be teaching back handspring connections. Let's move along. So here's my back handspring connection progressions list. This is what I think is, it's not drills. I mean, not in the sense of like we're going to have these side stations with these like funny drills. This is skills that teach skills. And I think you could, probably anybody could get a kid going through this progression list pretty quickly within a few months. If you have the right tools, you have a trampoline and a tumbling track. But if you have that, you could get through this within a couple months. And you get through this within a couple months, you're going to have a high-level tumbler within less than a year. Like you'll have a girl who can do double backs and double layouts and really high-level tumbling within less than a year. This is how quickly a person can learn if you just go through these steps properly and you work on that down position correctly. To jump as high as you possibly can, you throw into a back handspring with bent arms. So you do that on a trampoline because you want to learn how to have down energy, hit the trampoline, and then you want to know how to throw into the down position. And so that's going to force you to really get down. Then you go into back handspring, down to tumble track. And the key to this is just that they have to accelerate. The first back handspring is slower than the second is slower than the third. The third has to be faster than all of them. And it's just accelerate. If you cannot accelerate 3 back handsprings, you don't know how to get into the down position, essentially. I'm going to show some videos that will explain more, but just kind of trying to get through this kind of quickly. Jump as high as possible to a low back whip. That's what you then do on a trampoline. You jump as high as you can. You try to get a back whip to just turn over so it drops into the ground. And then you go back handspring to a back whip. You do it on the tumble track. I usually do any sort of whip action up onto an 8-incher. Then you do back handspring, back whip into a back handspring. That would usually happen onto an 8-incher. We do the back whip on the 8-incher, do the back handspring onto the 8-incher, slows things down. Then we're doing back handspring, back whip. Then we're doing triple back whips. And then basically we're using twisting connections, which is a whole nother conversation. That's it. That's the back progression list. That's what I do. So you have a single back handspring, you jump as high as you can. You can do a single back handspring. Cool. Then I teach you how to connect. I teach you how to connect through getting through that down position. And then we accelerate them. Once you can accelerate them, then I'm working right onto whips. And I just teach it all the way through trampoline and everything else. So then this goes into horizontal to vertical. What am I doing with my arms there, and what am I going to go with here? Well, here's the thing is, if I have this block again, I get into this down position out of the back handspring, essentially, I'm going to start lifting my arms. Now, why am I lifting my arms earlier when I'm going vertical? Well, this is actually slowing down your speed of rotation. So you're getting longer, so you're not actually turning over as much. So you're not going to get to that late block position. We're going to get to what I call an early block. Feet are hitting behind you and your center of mass has not crossed over that point of contact yet. And so lifting your arms up earlier actually slows down your rotation. It doesn't change the energy that's in the system. It just changes how quickly the wheel is spinning, essentially, right? Because if I'm sitting in a swivel chair and I spin around, I stick my legs out, I'm just going to slow my rotation down. I pull my legs in, I'm going to spin around a little faster. And so that's all we're doing with the lifting of the arms. We're saying, hey, I don't want to turn over as much. Let me lift my arms up to get into position correctly. What position am I trying to get into? I'm trying to get into position C, which is really getting my center of mass to launch into the air vertically. Now, do my arms have to rise? Well, so this is just showing us that our arms and hands and arms are getting bigger. Do my arms have to go up? No, not necessarily, actually. I'll show you videos of people that don't even have to lift their arms and are doing harder skills than what you do. So it's funny to me that girls do back layouts and they lift their arms. I get it. I understand why, because it follows the idea of a back handspring, a back whip, and a back layout. We lift our arms. But then when you get to like higher level skills like a triple backflip, you start to find that people don't lift their arms half as much as they used to. And it's like, well, what's up with that? just tell you a little story, and this kind of goes back into how I anchor kids' minds into lessons that matter. I took a motorcycle safety course. They said, what is the most dangerous thing about riding a motorcycle? Like, what's the number one thing that's going to kill you? And no one really understood. You say all these things, and the motorcycle instructor said, your helmet. And he said, it's kind of ironic that you have to wear a helmet, but then the helmet is going to be the very thing that kills you. And everyone's kind of perplexed, like, what's going on with this conversation? Weird. And he explains, when you stick a helmet on your head, you just made your head even heavier. You already have a heavy head, and now you made your head even heavier. So when you launch off your motorcycle, you fly off your motorcycle head first because it's the heaviest object. So it's pulling you, essentially. You're traveling at X miles an hour, you hit an object, you stop, your head pulls you because your helmet is so heavy and your head is so heavy. And it's true. I was in a motorcycle accident going around 55 miles an hour, and I flew off my motorcycle head first, landed on the roof of the car. Luckily, I knew gymnastics and knew how to flip in the air. But so that being said, you're going to find that accelerating your head and your chest is more important than what the arms are actually doing. Now, the arms are important in the sense of developmentally, coordination, and maturity of an athlete, just consistency. It's good to just teach, yes, lift the arms up, but do they have to set? No, because once we get into twisting and other things, they're not really going to work the same way. It's going to be more about head and chest than it is going to be about arms. A and B is more important of where the arm position is, determining how much rotation you're going to have when you go to C, throw into the position, and actually go to launch. So that's what's going to have more effect of what the arms are actually doing. Okay, so I want to show you some video of what we got going on here, because here's a nice little video of, let me get this going. Okay, so Kenzo, of course, is one of my favorite people to watch his videos. Okay, look at, we're getting small already, getting small, right? Reaching out long, changes things. Okay, he shrinks down to position, so he gets small. Are the arms dragging? I wouldn't call the arms dragging, but they're staying down while the chest is parallel to the floor. That's kind of an important cue right there. Okay, as he goes to throw, you can kind of see the 90-degree angle happening in the shoulders and the hips of what I was explaining as he's going to throw, right? Then we're throwing open. Okay, cool. He snaps down. You can see how he starts lifting his arms up more, but this is really because he doesn't want to turn over. So his feet are behind him and he's lifting his arms up more because he just doesn't want to keep turning over. He's got so much energy. He's not trying to, rotate. He's trying to stop the rotation so he can rise. And so then he goes to pick himself up. But does that look like he's picking his arms all the way up in the air? No, it does not. It looks like they're, because he's obviously twisting. Okay, here's beam with the good old Simone Biles. Here we'll go backwards this direction. So she's got her back handspring. Okay, she goes to throw. Okay, we can kind of see this relationship right here. That's the position I'm talking about. Again, we saw it in tumbling. It's happening right now here. You see there's a correlation from here. Okay, she's doing it from a stand, so she's obviously going to have more arm swing, but if she was just standing up off the ground, she'd pass through that position right there. But we're going to see her leave her arms down for half a second. So here's the step down. Okay, there's the arms and the legs. They're still following kind of that 90-degree position. Parallel to the chest is parallel to the floor. Arms are almost all the way down. Now, what is she doing out of this? She's picking her arms up a little bit early. So you're looking at that going, Raleigh, that's not what you said. Yeah, exactly. Wait a second. It is what I said. Because where's she going? Up. Do you see that? So she's picking her arms up early because she's going up. But if she was going backwards in a double back handspring, she wouldn't pick her arms up early. She'd leave her arms dragging longer because she'd be traveling horizontally. And so she's going up. That's the little bit that you need to understand. You see the nice 90 degrees relationship between hip, chest, and shoulders. So it's like she's holding onto the cube, and then she goes to throw the cube. And you can kind of imagine where that rectangle would get thrown. She's throwing it up and back, essentially. Goes back into another layout step out. Again, landing in a down position. Look at the landing positions. They're down. Center of mass is down on top of her center of mass. A very stable position to be in. Young athletes and early teaching coaches, you focus on levering out because that's low-level gymnastics, got to lever out type of stuff. Stand up early. No, stay down. Down is the best place to be. This girl supposedly got, I don't know, she got like a 9.9 on beam. Okay, so this is a level 8 beam. Here's her standing position. She throws. Okay. Now I'm going to show you that she's going to pick her arms up a little early. I think her arms are picking up early, but look at where her back handspring goes. It's kind of high. It starts to rise. I don't really like these high back handsprings personally because I think that they lead to wrist injury and elbow problems later down the road. But again, what is she doing? She's not dragging her arms. She's picking her arms up. Where does her body end up going? Up. So that's the correlation right there to me, is where if I want to go back or I want to go down, I am going to drag the arms longer. If I want to go up, I'm going to lift the arms earlier. Where does she want to go? Up. So what does she start doing? She starts lifting the arms early. The arms are not really in that 90-degree position relationship between her torso. Okay. Vault. I didn't talk about whips too much because whips kind of just blend between the layout and we go. But here's what I want you to see. Here's Simone doing her vault. Okay, she comes. Look at where the arms are dropping to. So again, parallel chest almost to the floor. Arms are dropping down. Okay, now she starts standing and throwing. So there's kind of a blend going where she's wanting to go down. So she drops the arms. So she rotates down into the springboard. But then she also wants to stand up. So she doesn't bring her feet down as much. She just brings her arms to initiate. So she's using her arm drop to create rotation for the lower half of the body, but she's not piking her feet into the ground. Kind of a nuance, blend happening. She's doing the lower half body of what a layout would be, but she's doing the upper half of what a back handspring would be. So there's this blend now happening. Then she goes into the throw, which is much more like a back whip. Okay, and I want you to notice this because this is the block. This is actually where the rise happens. The rise does not happen onto the table. There's some rise, but that's more like a back whip. This is where the rise happens, and I think this is more interesting. Is notice that her torso position and how it doesn't really rotate. Like there's not a lot of rotation from here to here, but look at the shape change that happens. So there's a lot of shape change that happens in comparison to rotation of torso. And so she's shrinking her shape while she's rising. And so she's rising and shrinking her shape. So direction is going up, but now she's conserving her energy and saying, hey, I want to shrink so that I can actually increase speed of rotation. And so I think that is interesting where we have this up, but let me shrink the shape so I can get where I need to be. Here's a gentleman who's going to do a triple pike on floor. Does that look like a set to you? It doesn't look like a set to me. It looks like his arms got fully extended here-ish, okay, here, and then he actually started pulling them into himself. And so what is this telling us? This is telling us that his chest and head is having a greater influence than his arms are having. But he's going to have to run fast. He's going to have to put a lot of energy in that system to make this work. But he understands that his mass, his head and chest have more mass than his arms. Arms drop so he can do his double pike. Or triple pike, sorry. We'll just watch it because why not? You know, who doesn't want to see a triple pike and some great facial expressions all while he's there? Dude, good job to that guy. He should go down in history as the coolest dude ever. Double layout, okay, kind of emulates what a back handspring. We're lifting the arms up early, but then we're trying to get to the kind of that whip throw position. So she's going long, she's getting long energy, but she's got to go really, really fast to make that happen. But you can see that the arms shrink. I think this is the other thing that you need to people need to understand is I'm going to extend myself out to move my center of mass where it needs to go, but I can't stay there to conserve the energy. So I have to drop the arms or shrink my shape so that I can actually ride the energy the position I created. So I think arms being more so like where do I need to position myself for my center of mass, but where I position my center of mass is determined on how fast I'm actually running and how much energy is in the system. Just kind of, there's this guy right here, which I thought we could just talk through this guy right here. So here's a back whip. It's kind of blurry, I understand, but 90-degree-ish arm position. Throws into his back whip. Okay, he closes the arms, shrinks his shape to create rotation so he can turn over faster. He starts to open up early, so he's shrinking to turn over. He's opening, okay, but we also have bounce of the tumble track. He's opening into the ground. So he's going to have to moving very, very fast by the time he throws. He's going into the ground, okay, and he's going to go up. This is not all the stuff I want you to see, but I just want you to, I'm going to point out some nuances here. So his arms are down by his side. He's keeping them down. And then as he hits the ground, he's now throwing. Okay, but this time he doesn't throw with lifting his arms. That's what I want you to understand. He's throwing by his head position. His arms go out to the side. So instead of throwing the arms like he was a second ago, he doesn't need the arms. He has so much energy coming out of the sky, as high as he did, that he can just throw his arms out to the side, just drop his head into the ground. Back whip, so he didn't even need the arms. Closes the arms to create rotation so he can get into position. Okay, now he throws the arms a little bit more. Okay, now the arms got thrown. Okay, so arms get thrown with the head and chest. Arms are in the down position, roughly at the 90 degree with the shoulder and chest. It's a very giant blur. I know you can't really see. Throws the arms up, but look at, he goes to take off. He has no arm throw. It's all head. Okay, it's all standing up with his head. And so I think that we understand. And does he do a triple pike also, just off a broad floor? Yes, dude, did not land that one, did he? That's okay. Good job for that guy also. So I think coming back to this is, why am I shrinking my shape? So I can get my center of mass so I can rotate around my center of mass or increase my speed of rotation so I can become more stable and so that I have something to throw with. Do I need my arms to throw? Well, how fast are you moving? If I'm going to beam, I'm not going to be moving very fast. So yes, you're going to need your arms to throw. But if I'm running ridiculously fast down a a rod floor essentially, and I've already thrown 2 tumbling passes and I've got just this momentum built up, then I probably don't need my arms to throw the same way. I can just throw my head. And if we notice, even at the end of these tumbling passes, they're able to just chuck their head and chest to create the initiation, the rotation they need, the change the center of mass's direction, and they don't really need to use the arms the same way. And okay, could he have used his arms more? Could someone use? I mean, I think that there's a very important thing to understand is the height of the person, the length of the lever, essentially, how long are their arms and their legs, how quickly can they move their arms and their legs and change positions with their lever, and then how fast, all these things have to work together. And so sometimes you have a shorter person who they could just move their arms and legs into positions really quickly. And so they don't need to actually try the same way. They don't have their timing sometimes can almost feel rushed or off just a little bit, like they need to chill out because they get into positions early. Quick, fast, short people. Tall, lanky, slow people tend to get into positions later. So they need any sort of help to speed themselves up or to speed themselves up into position. And so sometimes they need to shrink and get even smaller so they can rotate into position because they're not going to be able to throw as quickly as they need to. So you kind of have to understand that as well. Where some people, I would say, if a tall, lankier person, I would say, yeah, they need to have their arms down even more because they need to get into position and get there faster. But a short person who can, just go right into where they need to be, they may not need to be as particular with it because they're just so much quicker and so much more snappier and poppier with it. At the same time, there are techniques that we want to teach that are going to correlate to other skills. And we want to be able to, from my perspective as a coach, is I want to teach something once and then be able to take it with me into the future. And so what I do not want to do is teach technique A only to find out that I need to now use technique B and then to find out I need to use technique C, and then I change it constantly and I don't understand that it's all one thing and it all follows similar principles. There's just nuanced changes to it. And so I try to teach things like, okay, arms down, chest down is a key component to tumbling. And so I teach that as a thing, and then I teach the nuances of how it's applied to each skill, but we all still understand the down position. Get down, get into the down position. The kids understand that. And so that's an easier conversation to have that be our anchor point from there. Then the question is just which direction am I throwing the body into? Am I throwing it up? Am I throwing it, down? Am I throwing it horizontally? And that's just the difference between whip, back handspring, and back layout at that point. The speed at which I'm putting into the energy, the system, how fast am I running, how aggressive is my round off, how quickly can I back handspring, all of that will, at the end, add up, accumulate to what is the last thing I'm going to be doing. And I do need to have an understanding of that. But that kind of comes into knowing how to kind of tweak the conversation of what I'm having with you right now. So you need to understand these components, and then you need to be able to understand them so well you can tweak them to fit the athlete that you're working with and the surface that you're working on. Because the little tweaks that I would put on a tumble track, which moves much slower, I'm not going to use those same tweaks that I'm going to use on a floor, which moves much faster. And so it's much stiffer, essentially. And so I'm going to have to make tweaks to the floor versus to the tumble track versus the trampoline, which moves a lot slower. So I can adjust certain things for the speed and the rate of the trampoline. And so a lot of these things we're adjusting according to the surface we're on, and we need to know how to make those adjustments. And then we're adjusting to the speed of the athlete based off of how quickly they can move their arms and legs, or that angle between their shoulders and their hips, essentially. And so that combination really becomes the art of coaching at that point. But overall, this is it. That's as simple as it is. So hopefully you enjoyed the back tumbling connections conversation. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me you loved it. Tell me you hated it. It's just great to hear from you guys. I'm trying to build this community so that we can just get better, because when you are successful, that is just awesome. Have a great day. Be blessed.